Fala galera, sejam muito bem-vindos. Esse é o Vamos de Vendas, um podcast criado para conectar visionários como você com um time de vendas de elite. E nessa temporada, você já sabe, a gente está gravando aqui do coração do CRM Summit, em Santa Catarina, onde a Zoho reúne os maiores especialistas de vendas do mundo, vendas, negócios, tecnologia, para discutir o futuro dos negócios e o impacto no relacionamento com o cliente. Falando em tecnologia, você já sabe, a inteligência artificial é a palavra que mais circula em todos os círculos de negócio e vendas. Qual que é o impacto, como é que a gente vai fazer para lidar com essa tecnologia e mais, usar isso para ter mais eficiência nos negócios. A partir desse momento a gente vai traduzir esse episódio para inglês, porque a gente tem uma honra de estar entrevistando duas figuras super reconhecidas no ambiente de vendas para falar exatamente sobre inteligência artificial. Uma delas conhecida como um dos maiores autores de vendas do planeta, Jeb Blount. Be very welcome to our podcast. Thank you for coming, for your time.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it will be a pleasure. We have a lot of questions that we're going to throw at you, man. Get ready. And Joel Victorian, Director of Sales at Zoho US, directly from Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas.
We're just talking about it, man. We're going to cover all. Jeb, let's jump to the case. Start talking about AI. But before we jump into AI, I want to know a little more about you. I mean, that's your first time in Brazil. I know you know 4 to 5 words in Portuguese, but besides that, who is Jeb Blount? That if no, there's someone that don't know you at all.
Well, I'm the author of 16 books. I run a company called Sales Gravy. I live, eat, breathe sales. It's all I do. And I'm ashamed. I travel all over the world. I've been to Russia more times talking about sales than I've been to Brazil. And this is a country that's just massive. I've had no idea that there were over 200 million people in the country. And I'm so grateful for the people who are in Brazil who read my books. It's amazing. But I'm at heart, I'm a sales guy. And what I tell people all the time, if you really want to know who I am, read my books, because the way that I write books and what I write in my books is exactly what I do every single day, because I'm in the trenches along with my people selling just like everybody else.
And that's great, because we'd had the opportunity to discuss a little bit before. And I mean, as much as you were an amazing writer, and one of the books impacted my life in person, and I'm going to talk about this just in a minute. Not a lot of Brazilians, especially in sales, they read a lot. So that's one thing that we're going to cover just in a second. But Joe, please present yourself for everybody and what you expect for our conversation today.
Yeah, so Joel Victorian, as you stated earlier, Director of Sales for North America at Zoho. I, like you, in sales through and through. I've been in sales in some capacity for close to 20 years. And I guess my biggest strength, I would say, is keeping myself immersed in what it is that we're doing, right? In the trenches. My hands are dirty all the time. When my reps are in difficult phone calls, I'm the first to jump to the conversation. I'm still reading and connected via email to make sure that the conversations are progressing in the way that they need to progress and that we're hitting the key points. Because with sales, it's very easy to get off track. People get comfortable in some things that may have worked 1 or 2 times, but you always go back to basics. Basics will always take you home is what I tell them. So, but I am interested to know more about you in this particular series, right? Because salesmen are dime a dozen or so, they'd say, but I always tell people sales isn't for everyone. It's not for the weak. It needs very thick skin. You got to be very resilient and very self-driven because it will wear you down. So I'm curious to learn more about your journey and how that's helped in the books.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I love what you said about the basics, because for me, it really is the basics and fundamentals. It's what we call a paradox of the obvious, right? So a lot of times salespeople are looking for something, a silver bullet, a easy button, and the answer is standing right in front of them, and they can't see it because they're looking for something else. And if you ever want to change your sales game, get back to the basics and fundamentals, because they work. And what I always tell people is that the basics and fundamentals are boring, but in sales, boring works, and it works very well.
As long as you do with the consistency and you just keep in the game, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you mentioned, and I typed on ChatGPT before, how many books you had. And the answer was wrong, by the way. Let's start with that. It was wrong, because he threw me 10 books. I said, wow, I just 8, and it was 10, and you just brought me 16.
Yeah. And by the end of the year, it'll be 18. So we've got 2 books coming out this year. We've got a book called The LinkedIn Edge, which is a LinkedIn plus AI book that I'm writing with Bryn Tillman, and then Fanatical Prospecting Sequences, which is the sequel to Fanatical Prospecting, comes out this fall.
And there's one that was your favorite, or that you believe there's more impact, or just...
Well, I would say my favorite book that I've written is a book called People Follow You. It's a leadership book. I love that book. I'm a leader. I run my company, so I go back to that book often. And then what I think is my very best book is a book called Inked, and it's a closing and negotiating skills book. I love that book. It came out right before the pandemic, and it kind of got gobbled up because right when the pandemic hit, 60 days after the pandemic hit, we published Virtual Selling, which was an international standalone blockbuster book. And so Ink kind of got gobbled up in it because we didn't run the full promotion cycle for a book. Books are really hard to sell, so there's a lot of work that goes into them. But it's a book that I hear CEOs talk about a lot, where I'll go to a stage and the CEO will introduce me and said, Ink changed my life, or it changed my perspective on closing. So those would be my favorites.
Wow. And to me, it's funny because I have Ink. I bought, but being very honest, it's just like a regular salespeople. It's on my desk. I like to buy some books that make me feel interesting, and not every time I read.
You need to read that book.
No, it's great to have one on the back, right?
Yes.
On the video call.
Oh man, you look so smart when you have something like this. But to me, just getting back to the subject, it was Sales IQ, which in Portuguese the name is completely different, but some of the ideas of the micro commitment and some of even the psychological things, man, it was just so impactful. And the way that I do, and even on my profession, man, I used to be on the corporate role. When I wrote that book, I said, man, some more people need to know about it. And I keep talking about it all over the place that I go. And
that book's my opus. Like that's how I sell. That book is great. If you watch me in action selling, you'll see that book in action. The hard part about that book was I had to read about 800 research papers because there's a lot of psychology in that book, and had to translate it into something that people actually would read, because most of that stuff was so boring. It was mind-numbingly boring. That book was so hard to write just to get it set up so that a salesperson or a sales leader could read it and then translate it into my next sales call. This is what I'm going to do. And Inked, the book Inked, is directly plugged into Sales EQ. So we start building on that with strategy like MLP, which is motivation, leverage, and power. So how are you managing a sales process or a sales conversation to set yourself up to close the deal? And if you do close the deal and you have to negotiate, making sure that you are maximizing your pricing and your terms and conditions.
No, maybe I'll read now. Maybe no, for sure. But the last one that is just coming out, I think, as far as I know, because we're really producing a lot, is about AI,
yes.
Right? And my first question about AI would be, how do you really see today, and I know it's evolving really fast, but how you see today the impact AI on our business and our sales side?
Well, if you think about AI, where it is right now, the impact is more psychological than it is actually changing a lot of things. We certainly are seeing in our business that AI is, and I'll talk about this on stage here at Summit, but for example, my team, when we get off of a call with an important customer, so we've got a multi-close call, especially in training. There's a lot of calls that we sometimes will have 6 or 7 calls with stakeholder groups. We immediately are able to grab a summary of the call, go back through it, and then send it out to the stakeholders with, here's what we learned about you, here's what we're going to do next. And so we anchor those micro commitments going forward. Our clients love it. And prior to AI, there was just no physical way of doing it well, because it'd take 3 or 4 hours to sit down, look at a blank sheet of paper. AI produces it in about 10 seconds. And as long as we teach the humans to make sure that they read and edit it before they send it, we're okay. So I see AI impacting us there. I see AI in the short term helping salespeople get beyond the white sheet of paper of death, where they're trying to figure out how to start a proposal, how to start an email, how to start communication. And you can plug something into AI and instantly it will give you something. And that's a really good thing, as long as we teach the humans to make sure that you edit your AI. And in some cases, we're having to teach the humans basic grammar and spelling so that when they're editing their AI, they actually can show up. So we're seeing those type of things happening. we're looking at, AI agents, how they're solving some problems inside of our CRMs right now. In our data tools, we're using AI to help surface leads or pull together lists. All of that's in the very nascent stages. I mean, we're just not in a place where it's making the massive impact that it can, but it's learning and growing. My big belief for the future is that the holy grail of your AI is that it's going to live in the CRM. So you think about Zia and Zoho. So it's going to live there, and it's going to be looking at all these disparate pieces of information. So it'll be plugged into, say, we use, for example, Zoom Info as a data tool. So it'll be plugged into Zoom Info. It'll be plugged into LinkedIn Navigator. It'll be plugged into the actual CRM. It's grabbing data and information that's coming in through your website or any type of lead forms, and it's looking at all of those signals. And the absolute holy grail is a salesperson comes in the morning and it says hello, and Zia says back to it, hey, how you doing? And actually go through this dialogue in the back of the book. I like to have this whole deal where you've got your AI agent talking to you, and it says, hey, I've got this list of prospects that are moving into the buying window right now. You need to call them. And so immediately the salesperson walks through the door and they've got 20 to 25 opportunities or list that they can immediately take action on and flip or convert into a pipeline opportunity. And if you think about how powerful that is, we've been, at least in the US, doing industrial level selling since the early 1900s. And for 125 years, we've sucked at building lists. And we still suck at building lists. And that's one thing that AI can just crush for us. So for me, what I believe is there's all these little things AI does. It does pre-call planning great. It can help you build discovery questions. You're going to go on, and I work with a lot of field sales teams. You're going on a cold call. I can drop the website into AI and come up with 3 questions I can ask on a cold call and do it instantly. Great research, even Oppo research on your competitors, does all of those things really, really well. But the holy grail, like the place where the center of the universe is going to happen, is the CRM is going to transform into a tool that salespeople can use for prospecting. And then eventually it's going to be looking at pipeline opportunities and taking the same signals, all of those same pieces, and it's going to be giving you information about the risk of your deal or what you should be doing as a next step or things that you should be looking at, or even looking at intent data that's coming from your customer jumping or your prospect jumping on your competitor's website. So I think that's where it's really going to make an impact. We're just not there yet. The pieces are getting put together, but ultimately that's the place where it's going to have the most impact.
Yeah, and what you said lately, I mean, the final is, I think, what is the most challenging for the sales leaders that listen to us now, because it's so many pieces and they're so spread apart, which is hard to know, man, I'm going to use this tool, but I don't know how to connect to the other tool. And, but I really like the other tool. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of tools always consuming from the same base, but they're all doing different things at different prices. And you get to a point that's hard to pick what you're going to do, right? Completely different from having a whole mind to help you out.
That's, if you think about the early stages of the internet was like that. Every time there's been a new shift in technology, there's what we call in the US a wild, wild west. Like everybody is out there building their own little apps. You think how all of that works, and then eventually it begins to consolidate, which was one of the things that was hard about writing the book, is we couldn't put a lot of apps in there because we put them in there today and they'd all be gone tomorrow. But all of that will begin to consolidate, and we're learning from it and we're gathering information from it. And for sales leaders, what I would say to a sales leader right now is your number one responsibility is you better get ahead of the curve. Because I'm out with sales leaders right now, and for example, I was out in your neck of the woods. I was in Lubbock, Texas, a little bit further west. I was out there a week before last, and was with one of my big clients, and I was working with their sales team, and they have a brand new rep coming in who is selling like sub-complex deals, so not transactional, but a little bit higher up from that. And this kid knows nothing, and I'm like asking, like, who are we going to call on? And he's like, I don't know. And and they're like, everybody's scrambling. And I went to ChatGPT and I said, hey, ChatGPT, can you give me a list of all of the landscape companies in Lubbock that have more than 5 employees? And boom. And I asked it and put it in table format with the phone number and the owner of the company and the website and the address. And it produced it. And I said, here. So what we have to get as leaders is we got to get it ahead of the curve so we know that stuff so we can teach our salespeople. And by the way, it is no different than the CRM, because I know that you probably experience this in your world, but my world, when I'm out as a consultant or a trainer working with the companies that I work with, it blows me away that most of the leaders have no freaking idea how to leverage their CRM. They don't know how to put stuff into the CRM. They don't know how to pull things out of the CRM. They don't know how to actualize the CRM. They have no idea. The only thing they know how to say is if it's not in the CRM, that didn't happen. But they don't know how to use it. So if you're a leader and you don't know how to use the CRM, you're sure going to have a hard time as AI tools begin coming online to use AI tools. So as leaders, you've got to become an expert. Like you got to know it better than your salespeople so that you can make those decisions. Like you can help your salespeople go, hey, this is noise over here. Because just because AI can do something doesn't mean that it should do something. And if you're spending more time with your AI than with people, you're probably doing AI wrong. But sales leaders need to lead that, because salespeople, I mean, they're like butterfly chasers. I mean, they'll spend 4 days working on some AI tool that didn't do anything for them and come and say, hey, boss, look, I found something new. If the sales leader doesn't recognize that this isn't going to help them sell more, then the sales leader is going to allow them to lose that time and get distracted by all of the bells and whistles and bright, shiny things out there. So I know it's a little harsh to say that, but for the sales leader, you better, by God, like right now, make a commitment to get ahead of this curve and know what's out there, learn, play with it, use it, throw it out there, and be very quick to move on to things that are not helping you.
I got a question, if I may.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. And I got a question to you, just in the sequence, man. Don't worry.
So some of the examples that you gave related to AI are more on the entry point, right? Like going out, cold calling, door knocking, creating lists and things of that nature. But once you get someone from that point to the next phase into the sales cycle, where these conversations are actual conversations, right? Do you see AI playing a role there?
Massive. So think about I set an appointment with you. So I don't want to spend a lot of time, especially if I've got a big prospect base, doing a ton of research before every outbound touch. I'll waste a massive amount of time. So especially if I've got a big prospecting base, I'm not talking about you've got 70 enterprise customers in the entire world that you're calling on. Most salespeople are calling on a much bigger base. So I want targeted messaging that's going to work for most of those prospects. Once I set the appointment, I need to do research. Like I need to show up on that first call knowing something about them. So AI is beautiful for that. So I can, what would usually take me a couple of hours of work, I can do in about 10 minutes. And when you start thinking about some different tools, you've got Zia in your CRM that's going to be able to surface a lot of that. If you start connecting into these data tools, for example, like ZoomInfo, you could have Zia go to ZoomInfo and go figure out what the org charts looks like. So I'm meeting with Joel, but I need to know Joel's boss and I need to know Joel's colleagues. I need to know these people over here. It can surface that information very quickly. One of the things I use it for is I'll put the company's website in it, say, give me a summary of this website and tell me all of their core value propositions. And then I'll ask it to take those core value propositions and stack those up in a table format against their top 3 competitors. So I grab that information out of there. Now I've got questions to ask. I also use it to build questions. So discovery questions, if you think about it, like that's the most powerful thing that you can leverage, because it makes you sound like a consultant if you're asking smart questions. So if I say, I'm calling on Joel, he's a director of sales with Zoho, and I sell blank, give me 5 discovery questions that would connect with Joel and let him know that I know something about his industry. It's going to give me something. Now, not every one of the questions is going to be good. Not all of them are going to be perfect, but I'm starting with more than a blank sheet of paper. And if we teach humans, this is where the sales leader comes in. Now sit down and make them better and put them in the order that you want to call on them or ask them. That's where it really starts to pay off. Along with that is learning. So if I'm working on really big deals where I've got a big company with big problems, there's a lot of complexity. One of the things that I do is I use an AI tool called Notebook LM. It's a Google tool. It's free. Right now it's free. But I have a big customer I was working on. It was a 7-figure training deal. Those, you don't get very many of those. You get 3 or 4 of those a year that are that large. I've been working with the company since July, so we're talking about 6 months to try to put this together. I had all of my notes, so most of my notes were digital. I had their information, their 10K information. So I had their calls. I had them on YouTube, so I had their stakeholder calls or their shareholder calls. I had information from their website, and then I had a bunch of brochures that I collected on a couple of meetings with them. I plugged all of that into Notebook LM. It only works on that set of data, and then it started building me summaries, and it started building me FAQs, it started building me mind maps. It put all of this together, and then it created a narrative podcast that I was able to listen to in my car. So I listened to it. So by the time I went in to have my final conversation with their CEO and the top people in the organization, like, I'm an expert in their company. I'm an expert in their competitors. I'm an expert in what they do. So I'm asking questions, deep questions about particular product lines that they're running and their go-to-market strategy with those particular product lines. Well, we won the deal. And one of the things they said is, nobody asked questions like that. Nobody really understood us the way that you understood us. And that's what companies want to know, right? Do you get me? Do you understand me? And in the age of AI, we have to learn how to be consultants, because that's the value that we're going to bring beyond the information that they can type into AI and get in 2 seconds. They need us to be thinking and be intuitive and be creative. But AI gets us there way faster. I could have never done that on my own unless I had taken a week off and spent the entire week trying to learn everything about them or review everything that I'd learned. That's not to say I didn't do some of that work, but AI got me there way faster. So you start thinking about inside of the conversation, what that does for you. Also, let's think about an AI agent like Zia inside the CRM. So if along the way I'm capturing my notes, so on the table right now, there's a little device down here that's just recording us, and it'll translate all of that into a transcript, and then it'll build it into a summary. When I'm on physical sales calls, I take that with me and just say, I'm just going to be taking notes here.
That's that thing over there.
Yeah, that right there. And then I use a Remarkable. So I just use this little tablet that I can then again translate that into digital format. I'm loading all that information into my AI along with context, because I think that it's important that we go beyond just the AI summary, but we've got to get deeper into, hey, these are the things that they were saying. Here's the emotion behind it. Even little tidbits, I call them tidbits, but tidbits about, hey, their daughter was going here, or they were at they were watching their favorite football
those are
team.
So important. Important.
So we're gathering all that up. So now I'm going into the meeting. I go, hey, Zia, I'm going into this meeting and I need to get just a briefing, a quick briefing on all of the little things that I need to know and things I need to remember about Joel before I go in. And boom, I get, hey, Joel's daughter's name is Sally. She plays soccer, and her soccer team is #1 in Austin, and Joel's just crazy about that. And don't forget, say hook 'em horns, because he's all about Texas. And just be sure, don't say Georgia Bulldogs, because it's going to upset him right now because he's playing us in the SEC championship. But it'll be able to pull all that information out and give it to me in a format, as long as I can write good prompts, and AI's getting better for that, in a way that helps me understand. And if we take it even further, I'm in my car and I need to bone up on this. I can just say, hey, Zia, can you read me back everything that you know about Joel from my notes? And it'll go in there and grab all that information and read it back to me, so that when I'm walking through the door, rather than having to stop and do all this planning, I can get it so much faster, be ready to go, which means that I can make more calls, have more conversations, talk to more people, which is what we need to be doing as humans. That's our human advantage, and sound like I know what I'm talking about. And all Joel wants to know is, hey, do you make me feel important? Like, are you a person that cares about me? Do you understand me? Do you get me? I mean, he wants to know that. And if I walk through the game or walk through the door and say, how was the game? How did Sally do? It doesn't make a difference. He just says, wow.
It's power.
Yes.
Yeah, it definitely is going to get us faster to the place that we need to go in a certain point to create connections. But are you not afraid so people get so lazy because the information comes easy that I don't need to do anything? Then if I need, I just can talk to my personal assistant AI, and they can come everything to me, and they stop going after, because that's important, man.
Yeah, people are going to get lazy, and people are going to make some major mistakes. So, tell you a quick story. I was in Africa last summer, and I was on the banks of the Zambezi River, and I'm sitting in a tent, and there's a tech CEO sitting next to me, and we're in the middle of nowhere. Like, you got to fly in this place, but Elon Musk has got Starlink, so we have internet. So he's on his phone, and he gets this note from his PR agency about an article that they are putting together for a puff piece in a magazine out in San Francisco. So he's reading it out loud and going, that's going to change, and that's going to change. And we were having some adult beverages, and I may have been about 2 in, because I looked at him and said, ChatGPT wrote that. And he went, there's no way that a robot wrote this. I said, I'm pretty sure that ChatGPT wrote that. And he goes, there's no effing way that ChatGPT wrote this. My PR firm wrote this. And I went, a robot wrote this. Ask him. So he sends him a text message and says, hey, did ChatGPT write this? And they wrote back and said, yes, we put it into ChatGPT and they wrote it. He was majorly pissed off. Like, he was angry, mad, and he fired them. And because they AI'd it in, they got lazy. And he's paying them, this is like hundreds of thousands of dollars to this PR firm, and they're using ChatGPT for this. He feels manipulated. He feels let down. So if you're a salesperson and you think for a moment that you can just let AI do your job, trust me on this, AI will be doing your job, and you're going to be slinging coffee someplace. You're not going to be doing it. You have to use your human advantage. You cannot AI it in, because I will tell you this, and this is important, and I know you know this is true. Buyers care that you care about them. They want to know that you're willing to work for their business. And all of us have this insatiable need. It is unfillable need to feel like we matter, that we are appreciated. And the worst thing that you can do someone is tell them, you don't even matter that much. My robot handled that. I'm going next. And that's why I know that you get these, Joel. You get all of these stupid emails that are from salespeople that the first line, you know that a robot wrote it, because it says, I'm so glad about all of the work that you're doing over at Zoho to make the world a better place. And
Every single one.
You go, robot, and what do? Most people these days, they're deleting it and then they're blocking it. But we didn't used to block email. We would just delete it because it was a sales guy, right? So we go, hey, sales guy, just a stupid email.
Feel his pain.
Right. Now we block it because we know if we don't block it, that same robot's going to send you 5 more messages that are going to be just as lame. And the reason you do that is because you know that the salesperson didn't care enough to even try, didn't even write it like a human being. It doesn't mean that the robot can't help you write things, but that's why I go back to, you as a salesperson, you need to know how to write. But you gotta, there has to be some level of authenticity in it, or it won't work. And that's what's going to happen when people get lazy.
I think that was the big scare, though, and I'm glad I didn't ask my question because you dove right in. The human element of it, right? Because I've run into situations where I'm reading people's notes, reading their emails, and I'm like, this is not you. I know you. This is not you. But it doesn't give me the tidbits, that context. Right. Sally, what's your hobbies and how was the weekend? I went away to Aspen or whatever. Yeah. Those are the things that give us the ability to connect.
Yes.
And if you're just feeding information into an AI bot, right, that you lose that. And that's the part that connects us as humans. And you want to matter, right? Speak to what matters, not just the data that's put in there. So, yeah.
And it's cringeworthy sometimes. You see the robot will write personalized emails. But when you look at it, you're going, oh my God, this is a human did not write. I know this. The robot's trying to flatter me. And all a robot is it's a hype machine like Flava Flav, right? It just doesn't have a clock. It's doing its job.
Yeah, the other side of it is sometimes I get emails and sales approach. I didn't say anything about it, but before I was a sales rep, then I was 11 years buyer. So man, I receive all of kind of email that you can get. Most of them were really bad. And my doubt is, it's better to get a bad AI or get a bad human emailing you and then connecting you to you,
Better to get a bad human, because if you get a bad human, you're probably not going to block it.
Okay.
Right. And so, because once your email gets blocked, you're done. Like,
No,
you don't
it's
have
over.
that channel has been taken away from you. And it's gotten so bad. Like the AI email is so bad that I almost welcome when a human being writes one. Like, I get it and I go, oh man, yeah, dude wrote that one. But I'll even respond to it. I'm like, okay, well, at least you're a human. I mean, I appreciate that. And that's becoming a differentiator.
Yeah.
Is humanity. I mean, think about it. Right now, everything can be faked. Video can be faked.
Yep,
Pictures can
yep.
be faked. Audio can be faked. All those things can be faked. You know what can't be faked? This is real, right? So if I get something that's real, I'm like, okay, it was horrible, but it was better than getting one that said, Jeb, really appreciate everything you're doing for the sales world. You're amazing. Seriously.
Who are you? What do you know from me, man?
They're stalking you.
That's crazy. And one thing that you said, that everything is becoming possibly fake, it's impacting the way we trust on other people. Trust. I mean,
Yes.
And trust is the base of the
Yeah.
sales relationship, right?
It's something called the AI created everything bias. And
Wow.
Wall Street Journal wrote about this back in the spring. But when someone encounters, say, an image, and then they later find out that that image was AI generated, now they think that every image was AI generated. When you encounter a salesperson who gives you a proposal and it was like, you figure out that the salesperson had nothing to do with it, that tech executive, right? Now anything someone sends him, he's like, did a robot write this? So now you think that the AI faked it. And it's okay. Like, when we send summaries, people know that the AI did the summary. We tell them up front, like, our AI is going to record all this. We're going to send you a summary. That's not cringeworthy for them. They know that that's what the bot does. The bot's really good at those things. But if, like, my rep was on a Zoom call, and there's some AI right now that will put you on a Zoom call and people can ask you questions, you'll answer and it'll look like you. But if they were on a Zoom call doing that, and then the person figured out that they weren't talking to a
it's
real
over.
person,
Done.
whoa,
Over.
that you're forever. Like, they will never trust you again. And I think that's what we have to recognize is there's hype. AI is going to take every job, and then there's reality. And in reality, sales professionals are more important than ever before because we have the ability to do this, to conduct conversations, but we have to be amazing at relationships. And we have to be good consultants. Like, we have to have good business acumen. We have to be able to truly understand customers' businesses. We need to be able to make great recommendations, because if we can't do those things as a consultant, if we can't add to it, then why do people need us? And that was true before AI. It's just now it's going to be exposed in a way that I think in the next few years, it's going to be shocking for a lot of people that we have to get better at how we sell, like how we go through the practice. And, I can, see your body language, Joel, as as we're talking, but this is a true sales professional. Like, you came from a world where you had to win through, especially in the CRM world, right? You think of the CRM world, like, it's like I came out of industrial uniforms. Like, there's no differentiation. Like, we can talk about differentiation, but in the customer's mind, there was none. So how do we have to differentiate? We had to differentiate here. I wrote a book called People by You because of that. We had to differentiate by getting to know them and doing good discovery and showing up and helping them solve problems, even if the problem didn't have anything to do with my product. We had to have good business acumen. We had to win on how we sold, not what we sold. And in a global economy where there's becoming parity across the board on many, many products and services and software, that's really coming into play. And what AI should do is take someone like Joel, who is a master at the craft of selling, and help him spend way more time doing that work than doing other work. And if we do that, Katie, bar the door.
That's crazy.
That's a Texas thing right there.
Yeah,
Hook
man.
'em.
I don't know if the AI will catch that and translate to Portuguese. Probably not. We're gonna miss that. She's gonna translate with something crazy thing. But Jeb, Joe, when Jebby start talking with us, he kind of painted a different role when the CRM is gonna be able to kind of conduce. I mean, how far are we to really see something like that? I mean,
Not
to
far at all,
produce,
in my
but,
opinion. Zia, as it sits in Zoho CRM, can tell you when the best time to email someone. It can tell you the best response time in terms of like social media posts through Zoho Social. So there's a billion different ways that AI is already influencing what we're doing in the CRM now. But to Jeb's point previous, it's still the human aspect and the human element of what we're doing behind the scenes that's going to help AI just become that much more efficient, that much more, we'll stay with efficient, lost it there. But that's the most important thing. And even in my role with leadership, it's very easy to get away from the day-to-day, the grind and the getting your hands dirty. But for those that care, for leaders that care, I agree wholeheartedly. You have to be in the thick of it. You have to be ahead of it. But it is also not an excuse for you to be lazy, because AI can do so many things, but it can't make a bad email good. It can't do that. It can't teach you the contextual things that we as humans maybe don't exercise as much as we should, because as I was speaking to earlier, that genuine curiosity about somebody's business, putting yourself in their shoes, making their problem your problem, AI is not going to pick up on that. It can help you, right? Once you've identified it and you've put it in the format that it needs to feed into whatever AI tool you're using, but it's not going to pick up those tidbits and things like that make that connection that much stronger. Because with the consultancy part, that trust factor, that's ultimately what people are after, because everybody's out to make a quick buck. You don't know if you can believe what's on the news, on X,
How
like
crazy is that,
images and all these other things, right? So like people are looking and they're grasping towards things that they feel in their soul that they can trust and rely on. And salesperson is a salesperson is a salesperson. What sets you apart from the other salespeople? And that's the thing that you have to identify, and that's what you have to hone in on. And I think AI can be a perfect complement to that. But I still stand by it is not an excuse to be lazy.
Yeah, that's really important. And writing for the book and preparing and using the research and everything, have you seen something that really caught your attention on the use of AI? Say, wow, this is big.
I've seen a lot that really caught my attention. I mean, I've seen some amazing things, but I'll tell you the thing that really caught my attention more than anything is I spent about 9 months on this book, and I could have written it a lot faster, but it was changing so fast. I would write something and then wake up the next day and the names of everything had changed. Or, it was what we wrote about yesterday didn't exist today. It was that fast, and it began to plateau. And there's some studies around this that are coming out of some of the universities that where AI is going to plateau here pretty quickly. And then we're going to see sort of a down movement in terms of innovation. And then there's going to be another spike. And I can feel that and see that there's things happening, but we're not getting like the rapid innovation that we were getting at the very beginning. And to some extent, AI is beginning to eat itself at the large language model. So we're moving into these more narrow language models. And I do think on the CRM side, in terms of building lists, one of the things that's going to be a struggle is that every company is going to be a little bit different. So we're going to need to train the AI, especially around building lists, around every company's sales process, every company's ideal customer profile, that type of thing. But the thing that surprised me the most is how behind most salespeople are. And the aha moment for me was back in September, we did this webinar, and I don't know, we had about 8,000 people sign up for it, and it was AI related, and it was a Q&A, so it was a Ask Me Anything. And Anthony Anarino, who's my co-author on this book, was there, and I was there, and we're getting these questions in, and we could have been there for 4 hours, like all these questions. The questions were remedial, like they were just like the questions that I'd answered like a long time ago, like what is Chat GPT, like questions like that, remedial. I was stunned. I thought everybody was further ahead than they are in terms of adoption rate and understanding things. And I think in our bubble where we're all thinking about AI, talking about AI, we're forgetting that there is a massive population, like 99% of the population, that is not clued in and not using it. That was the most surprising thing. And I'm surprised every day. Like I'm sitting there talking to somebody and go, well, let's just put it in Chat GPT and see what it does. And they're like, what? I don't even have that on my phone. And I think that's where I had to slow down just a little bit and think maybe we're getting a little bit too far ahead of the people that we need to bring along behind us. But I'm back to leaders. Most of that's being driven in sales teams by leaders who are clueless. Leaders aren't doing the research. Leaders aren't diving in. Leaders may be afraid of the technology. they're not trying it out. Every time I hear about some AI thing, somebody said something to me on the last podcast, and I'm sitting over there on my phone figuring this thing out. I called my people at the office and said, by the time I get back, I want you to tell me whether or not this is worth our time and effort. And I think that leaders have got to begin driving the process and bringing people along. But I also think that companies like Zoho and Zia are going to solve a lot of these problems because to some extent Zia is consolidating all of these disparate tools that we've been talking about, and it's doing the work that I've been doing by myself, trying to put these things together. But the other most surprising thing is, and I'll tell you this: I was driving I was in Odessa, Texas. I don't spend a lot of time in Texas. Yep. So I was in Odessa, Texas, and I had to drive to San Antonio, and this was back at the end of September. End of September. So I'm driving back from San Antonio, and I've got 5 hours. So I'm like, I'm going to try something out. And I'm working on this leadership article sort of vignette thing. So I pull up my AI on my phone, and I push the talk button, and I go, "Hey, are you there?" And she goes, "I am." And so really nice. And I said, "I've got this article I want to work on. Would you be willing to work on it with me?" She said, "Sure." And I said, "Well, here's my idea for the article." And she goes, "Jeb, you're amazing." And I was like, okay, this is going to work.
He was a bit to fall in love. You was like this to fall in love.
So I spent 5 hours working through this article that may end up becoming a book. And I would just say, she would read it back to me and I'd go, "That sounds pretty good. What about this? Here's one." And I would just, in my normal language, go, "Here's one of the things that leaders run into. They're working on a sales team and they've got a mediocre performer. And then that performer is, has got maybe a big deal that they're working on, but the leader knows that they need to get rid of what do they do?" And she would work through the process. So when I got to San Antonio and parked my car on my AI, I had 5 hours of conversation. I had more than 4,000 words that had been written, including what I was dictating and what she was giving me back. And I was able to then dump that down into a document that I turned into a blog article, and now I'm working on a book from it. But I was able to use that time so much more productively because AI was there. I would have never been able to accomplish that in such a short period of time. That was just like blew me away. And I think it opens the door to a salesperson maybe sitting down with Zia at some point and having a conversation. "Hey, I'm working on this deal, and here's the things that I know, and I'm just wondering, like, can you help me out? What would be some solutions that I might propose in this situation that would sound to this customer like it was customized to them?" And then think about all of the proposals that are in the CRM now across the entire enterprise. Zia in 2 seconds can scan everything and go, "You know what? We proposed this to this company, sounds like this company, and we won the deal. Try this." There's no way an individual salesperson could ever pull that off.
Lembrando que esse podcast é um oferecimento do Zoho CRM, software de gestão do relacionamento com o cliente que tem funcionalidades ideais para os líderes de venda que querem levar os resultados para outro nível. Experimente gratuitamente em zoho.com/CRM. E agora, vamos de volta para o podcast. And that's one thing that really shifts our perspective about AI. And that's why I point out, instead of working for us as lazy that we tend to be, we're working with AI to bring something, much more stronger and powerful, right? Wow.
Yeah, we're being enhanced by AI.
Yeah.
See, but that's the ideal scenario, the way that you just articulated how you used it and the efficient time that you used it, right? 5 hours, it's a great conversation, I would assume. But you innately have that in you to stretch or to push the boundaries, right? Like let's see how far I can take this. And I don't think that that's a quality, that might sound harsh, but I don't think that's a quality that a lot of humans have, especially the younger generation that are used to that kind of instant gratification. I would want them to know the fundamentals, know the basics first before relying on AI to circumvent their job, essentially, because you're asking about, hey, I have this customer that's, scenario X, Y, and Z and so forth. Then whether it be Zia or whatever AI function just blurts out what the next step should be, right? But you don't know the fundamentals. So how do you get that?
And so when in the book, The AI Edge, my favorite chapter is, or chapter 19, 20, and 21, I talk about writing. And for a salesperson, I believe written communication is just as important as how you show up and what you wear, how you speak. It's how your documents look. And I make the point that before you can really let AI write for you, you need to know how to write. And I give them, here are resources, go learn these things. Now, you don't have to know grammar, everything. I have no idea I used to know how to diagram a sentence. I got no idea. And I've written 1 million words. And so, and I don't write the best grammar, and I misspell things, typos, those type of things, but I know what good sounds like. And a lot of salespeople don't. Like, they don't understand the basics and fundamentals. So I agree with you. I think that as leaders, we have to teach them the ABCs before they can go apply more, or they'll get lazy. But that's another thing that shocks me is I'm old. I'm an old. Like you said, you've been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing this for 38 years. 38 years, right? And I'm still curious. And I'm like, if something happens, I'll go in and I'll break it down and I'll deconstruct it and I'll figure it out and I'll play with it and I'll push all the limits in it. And I don't mean to say that there's an entire generation out there that won't do it, but we talk about it all the time. We have this cadre of Gen Zs, and I hope my people aren't listening to me because I'm hiring as many of them as I can because I love their curiosity and I like the way that they think. But we'll give them technology, and if it doesn't work, like if you push the button and it just doesn't do it, they abandon it and move on to something else.
Absolutely.
And they don't tinker with it. And I don't know the solution of that. Like, I haven't figured it out because my brain can't deal with don't tinker. Like, they'll just bounce off of it and move on to the next thing.
It's the instant gratification thing, like button results. But I'm old ish. So still having that genuine curiosity, for me, that goes a long way. Like when I first started my Zoho journey, shout out to Ricky, my old manager. I mean, my training with him was 1 hour a day for 4 days. And the rest of it was like, go fish. But I had my personal laptop where I had a trial. And anytime I would receive a ticket, I would try to recreate that problem in my own trial so that I can understand it and then articulate it back to them. Okay, here's how we got here. Here's how we get to the finish line. And if it's something that I couldn't reconstruct on my own, then we'll do it together, But it's just that genuine curiosity, that no fear of getting my hands dirty and just getting into the weeds that I think we lose in some capacity. And I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest AI fan, right? But that's my own doing. I'll get there, I promise, Jeb. But I think so much gets glossed over with tools such as AI that we lose sight of how we got here in the first place, right? So I know a lot of people probably will start relying on AI to just do their entire job.
Everything,
even though they occupy the seat, they're not the ones actually doing the work. And that's the thing that scares me about AI. But to your point and the way you use it, there's other ways to get around.
I'm with you. I'm not a huge AI fan. I wrote a book called The AI Edge because it's here. And what I basically did was broke down every step of the sales process from prospecting all the way to closing the deal and negotiating, and talked about how you can use AI in those spaces to give yourself more time to have conversations with people. My whole deal with AI is more time to sell more. And if it's not doing that for you, don't use it. And if it's making you a bad seller, don't use it. But I'm not a fan. I want to put it back in the box, shove it in a hole, and never see it again, because life was way better before AI. And frankly, I'd like to take social media and put social media back in the same box.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that too. Yeah. But those things are loose. So I think as a leader, if you're listening to Joel, what I would say is it's good to have a healthy skepticism. It is good to be able to think and say, that sounds really, really good. But is that going to get us from here to here? Which means, are we selling more for it? Are we getting more time with our customers? Because if you're not having more time to have conversation with your customers, what's the point? So I think that you have to have that. But at the same time, as a leader, you have to go start poking at it and paying attention to it and looking at it and seeing what should you introduce to your team. And if you're just going to rely on, you're a Zoho customer and you're just going to rely on Zia, and I truly believe that the future of AI is all of the things we're talking about, all this noise is going to consolidate right in the middle of the CRM. And the CRM is going to be a completely different experience now than it was before. But you got to go learn how to do it. I mean, as a leader, you just cannot be in a situation where you don't know how to do the CRM things, use the system better than your salespeople. You got to know that.
We're going to the end of the episode, and that would be my final question to you, Jeb, because we talk about the leadership, about not being lazy. I'm going to throw that back to you, right? And how, the leadership, the sales leadership that listen to us now, in a few simple steps, how can he not being lazy and really go after, right? Keep this flame open.
Yeah, I'm going to put this in a sort of a small bucket. For the last 30 years, so let's think from 1995 until now. Is it about 30 years?
Yeah, we'll call it.
About 30 years. So the last 30 years, what has been echoing off the walls of sales rooms is if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen. Back in 1999, I remember, because running a big sales force, we were like, okay, here's the deal. We're rolling out CRM. If you don't put stuff in the CRM, we're going to fire you. We didn't, because nobody fired their top sales rep for not putting stuff in the CRM. Nobody did. And today we're having this same freaking conversation. I go all over the place. Like, if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen. We say this over and over and over again. Okay, so here's where we are with AI. So you've got Zia in Zoho. Now you think about this. You're a large organization, and you're an organization that has, say, 100 salespeople, and they're spread out across the entire U.S. or Brazil or Latin America. All those salespeople are gathering bits and pieces of information that they're putting into the CRM. And we need to look at it like a big jigsaw puzzle that's giving us information and signals. If you don't put it in before AI and things don't, you don't take care of your CRM, the only person you're typically hurting is the guy that's coming in behind you. Like the next rep, you sort of mess them up because they're like, man, everything in the CRM's terrible. Today, you don't put it in the CRM, you're hurting a sales rep, not in Austin, but a sales rep that's in Atlanta, because that sales rep didn't get the pattern that you put in there. And like, this is one of the top rules of AI: trash in, trash out. Put a bad prompt in, you're going to get bad information out. Right? You put bad information in your CRM, you're going to get bad information out. So right now, not to be lazy, it's this. For years, we've been saying, if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen. Right now, you have to make sure that you are maximizing CRM discipline. You may have to fire your best sales rep. You may have to send the message that everything goes in the CRM. And yes, we're going to have a lot of tech that's going to do a lot of the work for us, but salespeople still have a responsibility to make sure it got there. They have a responsibility to make sure that there's context in there, that information that the AI won't pull out, like the tidbit. Like, you'll have a whole conversation. You'll talk about your daughter on an AI summary. It won't pull that information in. It's only looking for the information that is relevant to the transaction. Right now, as a leader, the line in the sand is drawn. You don't get into the CRM, Zia can't help you. Zia is not going to be able to maximize that because it can only pull out the information and use the information that you have there. And today, every sales rep is impacting every other sales rep. And I'd love to hear your opinion on this, but that to me is right now the end of lazy is it gets into the CRM.
I mean, you're speaking my language, and I too have said, if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen. But I also say notes aren't just for you; they're for the person behind you. So sure, I can have
beside you.
Yeah, and sure, I can have this understanding of the way that the conversations are flowing and stuff. But if I'm not painting a picture with my notes for my engineer to do a demonstration for, one of my colleagues because I'm out sick or I got to catch Sally's soccer game, like that's the beauty of CRM. That's its intended use. And with the addition of AI, again, it's only as good as the data that you're feeding into it. So I didn't even think about it in the respect that you said it, where Austin sales is affecting sales maybe here in Brazil or in Atlanta or wherever, right? Because we're feeding this monster and helping it grow its brain so it can be better utilized for everyone that has access to it. But yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Well said.
Wow, guys. thank you very much. I mean, it was amazing. You could be talking about Austin, Texas, and Sally.
Hook 'em.
Go dogs.
I'll see you there pretty soon. I'm kind of addicted to that. But, Joel, if someone wants to follow you, understand more about your job, and connect with you, how they can find you?
Yeah, easy to find. You can find me on Instagram, although that's more personal, at Joel Victorian. LinkedIn is the same as well, just Joel Victorian. It's a pretty unique name. At least my mom told me that, so I try to use it as much as possible.
Jeb, please.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just type my name in, find me on LinkedIn. But I'm at Sales Gravy everywhere else. So on TikTok, at Sales Gravy. On Instagram, at Sales Gravy. On Facebook, at Sales Gravy. On Twitter, at Sales Gravy. On YouTube, at Sales Gravy. And make sure that you go and listen to the Sales Gravy podcast.
And that's the guy who said that would throw social media in the box. Remember that?
Yeah,
I got you there,
he
man.
sure did.
Come on.
He
No
sure
way,
did.
no way.
I just want to know when you sleep.
I don't think he does that. No way. Thank you very much, guys. It was a great time having
Thank
you.
you.
And
Thank
I'm
you,
sure
guys.
he's helping the audience to navigate through this AI with much more information, knowing exactly what they need to do to be ahead. All right? Muito obrigado por acompanhar esse episódio até aqui. Se você quiser aproveitar e conhecer um pouco mais da ferramenta, acesse zoho.com/CRM. Vai encontrar, entre outras coisas, a ferramenta da Inteligência Artificial ZIA para te ajudar a vender mais. E a gente se vê no próximo episódio. Um abraço. Até a próxima.